Thanks for joining us. I'm Megan Roberts. Uncertainty is the theme in Ottawa right now. Parliament is suspended. A Liberal Party leadership race is around the corner, and it's an election year. So where does that leave the territories? And after a decade of Justin Trudeau's leadership, how are Northerners doing? To find out, I spoke earlier to NWT Liberal MP Michael McLeod. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me. Happy New Year.
And Happy New Year to you as well. It is quite a time to be in Ottawa right now. How do you think Trudeau's resignation will affect most Northerners?
Well, I think, it's certainly been an interesting couple of days. It's been very exciting and in many ways it's also very concerning. I've heard from a number of people across the north. Some are happy that they've been asking for the Prime Minister to step down. They want to see new leadership with the Liberal Party, and there's others that are quite concerned. So I think there's really a mixed sense of feelings out there because we're not totally sure of the future.
Yeah, certainly a lot of questions coming out right now, not a lot of answers because there's so much up in the air. One thing we can talk about, though, is some of the legacy of Justin Trudeau. And I wanted to ask you if you think that he did enough, specifically in the North, especially with regards to issues like infrastructure and housing, where there are still some major gaps.
Well, I think the government, under the leadership of Justin Trudeau, did a lot of good work. They did many deals where there was transformational change during his time in office. I believe Justin Trudeau is the one Prime Minister in my lifetime who really understood the needs of Indigenous and Northern communities. He's probably one of the few party leaders that knows where Fort Simpson is, and Hannah Butte is, and Norman Wells, and Uvik, and Tuktoyaktuk, and he's been in most of the communities, paddled most of the rivers, and we've seen a lot of investment in North, historical amounts, and I've been in politics for a long time. I've never seen anything that compares to what we've been receiving in the Northwest Territories, in Indigenous languages, in infrastructure, in clean energy, conservation, and housing. We've never seen that.
Yeah, I mean, I would ask, you gave a long list of accomplishments, but what would you say to people in the Northwest Territories who might listen to that and say, that's nice, but I still don't have adequate housing, or I still don't have enough roads in my community. I still don't have a highway that connects my community to other communities. So if somebody were to ask questions like that, looking at the record of Justin Trudeau, what would you tell them?
Well, I would certainly point to some of the detail that I could provide. For instance, in the area of housing, we're close to $1 billion of investment in housing since 2015. Every Indigenous government has received housing money. For the first time in our history, we have two streams of money coming to the Northwest Territories, and some of it's coming direct to the Indigenous communities, Indigenous governments. There's been more infrastructure money provided to the Northwest Territories than ever in our history. If anybody wants to look back to the time the Conservatives were in power, it was pitiful. We certainly wouldn't hesitate to put our track record on a table and put it up against anything Pierre Poilievre is advocating for, because you won't find any detail in the Conservatives' plan. It's all slogans and verbs and nouns, and a lot of stuff that doesn't really make anything, doesn't give us any comfort that you're going to see investments.
I also wanted to talk about Trudeau's record with Indigenous people. An Anishinaabe columnist for the Winnipeg Free Press calls Trudeau's legacy with Indigenous peoples in Canada, quote, complicated and contradictory. What do you make of that statement?
Well, I haven't seen the statement. I'm not familiar with what she's talking about. I think you only have to reach out to the Indigenous governments in the Northwest Territories, and you'll see how much interaction has happened. The Prime Minister has been probably one of the Prime Ministers that has been very easy to get access to. He's made sure his ministers pay a lot of attention to Indigenous issues. He's taken the department and divided it up to 3 different sections so that ministers can take the time to work with Indigenous governments. There is still a lot of work to be done. I would have loved to see more things happen. We had challenges because we get pushback from other parties. Not everybody's on side with reconciliation, and it's going to take time.
Okay. MP McLeod, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for talking to me. Appreciate it.
The resignation of Justin Trudeau has upped the stakes of Arctic security. That's according to some experts who say Canada is now adrift without leadership, and that weakens Canada's international standing. Cheryl Kawaja reports.
One moment, the Canadian Prime Minister is giving his resignation speech. The next, Donald Trump Jr. is flying into Greenland for a visit.
We are in the most troubled time you could imagine in terms of Arctic security.
Billed as a personal trip, the jaunt to Nuuk renews concerns over the president-elect's plans for the global north. Trump has previously talked about buying Greenland. And when asked by reporters, he now says he wouldn't rule out using military or economic force in order to take over Greenland.
The Trump administration is very unpredictable. We know that the president is quite unpredictable. So we should be, I think, a little bit worried about the direction the Trump administration is going to take in the Arctic.
Trudeau's resignation only adds to the uncertainty. Ken Coates argues the outgoing Prime Minister has lost all credibility on the international stage, one already fraught with tension, and now Canada waiting to see who will lead the country. Even after an election, Coates worries the American influence won't bode well.
Mr. Trump will continue to push us and will probably make bad decisions as a result. Rather than ones that serve the interests of the North, we'll do the ones that serve the interests of the United States. And we should be looking instead at saying, what do we need in the North for our security and our defense?
And he says in an ever-changing polar political landscape, it may mean different voices are being heard.
We're probably going to hear more about our northern premiers, the governor of Alaska, and certainly going to hear more from the Indigenous leaders.
Of course, this is all playing out in real time, and political observers know there are no certainties. There will, however, be close scrutiny of the Arctic region as the offices of the Prime Minister and the President make their switch. Cheryl Kawaja, CBC News, Whitehorse.
As you heard earlier, Justin Trudeau's decision to step down also came with the suspension of Parliament until March 24th. The CBC's John Hernandez has more on what prorogation means and how it's been used in the past.
At its core, prorogation is a tool that allows the Prime Minister to press pause on all parliamentary activity without dissolving government.
It's a parliamentary norm. Really, it's meant for other kinds of circumstances like, if there's a war, a national emergency, security emergency, there's all sorts of things you could imagine that prorogation would be necessary.
This political scientist says it's become a controversial political practice over the years. In 2008, it was used by Stephen Harper as his opposition leaders attempted to form a coalition to unseat him. Prorogation stalled Parliament, and the coalition deal fell apart.
It's a pretty dramatic move. Harper did it in 2008, and again faced a lot of criticism. It's worth noting that Trudeau also mentioned early on in his tenure as Prime Minister that he condemned that use of prorogation.
Justin Trudeau prorogued Parliament in 2020, which suspended a probe into the We Charity scandal. Jerram says by pausing Parliament now, the Liberals buy some valuable time.
the Liberal Party has some time to choose a new leader. Not as much time as they may like. We would assume that that leader has to be in place a little bit before March 24th, because when Parliament resumes, the objective of the Liberal Party would probably be to try to survive a confidence vote.
Prorogation also halts bills moving through Parliament. Legislation now at risk includes Canada's Online Harms Act, a bill targeting social media companies, and the First Nations Clean Water Act. Those bills would need to be reintroduced to move forward, a tall task for a government whose future is far from certain. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
The search for a missing Yellowknife man ended in tragedy yesterday. Northwest Territories RCMP have confirmed that Lance Beaulieu has been found dead. Beaulieu went missing on Friday, and his body was discovered yesterday evening. Police say a search crew found Beaulieu's body just kilometers outside of Yellowknife, close to the Ingram Trail. The search for Beaulieu was led by police with help from search and rescue volunteers. The NWT's chief coroner is investigating his cause of death. Beaulieu was 41 years old and a father of 2 children.
The Kanwipita National Inuit Health Survey team is going to every community in Nunavut, speaking to Inuit about their health and wellness. And every answer will help us as Inuit determine our own priorities for a healthier future. Together, we will answer the question, Kanwipita, how are we? Find out when we're coming to your community. Learn more at qnihs.ca.
Earth is our collective home. That makes us all family. As family, we strive to love and protect each other. Diversity of species is our strength. We are all connected. We survive and thrive together. We celebrate many things this season and make many choices. Taking care of our family should be the easiest. We're in this together.
Does public transit really need more police officers? And so this is it.
Welcome to the Greenbelt.
It is now believed that Titan was destroyed. It makes sense that they get a larger share. Or does it?
All of this, just single detached homes.
Yes.
What do we know? How is that even possible? Well, with a little bit of help, I think we can explain it.
About that with Andrew Chang.
Being there means being here. Russian forces, they want it badly. It's just a fraction of the mess here in Port aux Basques. To witness, to listen, to share. I do worry about them. Adrian Arsenault reports on CBC News, stream free.
The University of Victoria has created a new online tool to help people better understand the impact of their drinking habits. And the timing couldn't be better. It happens just as dry January is beginning and right after calls in the U.S. for warning labels on alcohol bottles about the risk of cancer. Saurabh Sandhu reports.
How much alcohol is safe to drink? It's an age-old question that can now be answered through the help of technology.
This is the first sort of calculator in the entire world where you can get your kind of risks and the benefits of drinking.
NAMI is part of a group of researchers at the University of Victoria who developed a new online tool where people can enter information about their drinking habits and calculate the risk of several alcohol-related diseases.
For people to be mindful about their drinking and can maybe consider drinking a little bit less.
The launch of the website comes as the U.S. Surgeon General calls for guidelines on alcohol consumption limits to be reassessed in that country.
The research has been building for years now. We've had more and more evidence that keeps accumulating year by year. That's giving us a strong connection, a causal link between alcohol and cancer.
He believes alcohol should have a clear label warning consumers about health risks. Researchers in BC say it's a move Canada should consider as well.
The idea that you can have more information on a can of peas than a bottle of whiskey is frankly pretty ridiculous.
In 2017, Yukon had a pilot project that put cancer warning labels on bottles of alcohol. But just weeks into the project, the Yukon government pulled the labels after pushback from the Canadian alcohol industry. Years later, the idea is still receiving mixed reaction.
I don't think the warning label is a deterrent.
I think putting at least a warning label might be a good idea.
Alcohol kills more people than smoking in America every year. I think it's hypocritical not to do it for one to the other. I'd just be interested to see any studies before and see does it even work.
Does it work? Nemi says it could make a difference.
We surveyed 900 people across Canada in the development of this website, and we had focus groups. People don't want to be told what to do, but they do want good information.
He says he understands drinking has become a way of socializing, but hopes the new online tool can help empower more people to make informed choices. Saurabh Sandhu, CBC News, Vancouver.
The landscape around the community of Sachs Harbor NWT is changing. The shores of Banks Island are eroding and hills are slumping into lakes. Then there's the melting sea ice, which not only threatens those who rely on the ocean, it also puts the community at the center of a possible global dispute over Arctic waters. The changes are a concern for many, but this isn't the first major change the community has navigated. The CBC's Luke Carroll was in Sachs Harbor last month, where he spoke to people about the past, present, and future of the community. So, Luke, why don't you start by telling me more about the history of the community and specifically the role that the fur trade played?
Yeah, so Sachs Harbor is one of the younger NWT communities. So Banks Island, where Sachs is located, was discovered to have a lot of white foxes and still does have a lot. And in the early 1900s, that fur was a very popular fashion item. So Inuvialuit trappers would head out on the land close to modern-day Sachs Harbor to get pelts.
To my recollection, I heard stories about 1930s, somewhere on there. You know, they started 40s, they start living over here, going to mainland to get supplies for the winter, and that's where they survived over here.
So John Lucas Sr. Is an elder who grew up in the community. He says his father moved there in 1958. So it was initially a seasonal place. People came to trap as many foxes as they could, but then things began to change. So in 1929, 1930, the average white fox pelt went for about $32.94. That's the equivalent to around $600 today. Today, that pelt costs about $85. So now, few people continue that trade. Many do still rely, though, on traditional harvesting, hunting, and fishing. But even those trades are also being threatened by changes.
I'm just blown away by the price difference from 1929 until now. Tell me more about those changes, though, that you just talked about, Luke.
Yeah, so Sachs Harbor is really on the front line of climate change. It's seeing those effects firsthand. And people are noticing the eroding coastline, particularly, including John Lucas Sr., who can see the ocean from his back window.
Oh, yeah, I'm worried about it. The beach is getting closer. Pretty soon I could just about throw a fishing rod from my deck to fish.
So his son, John Lucas Jr., is the chairperson of the Sachs Harbor Community Corporation. And he says that they're worried about hills slumping into lakes and threatening the fish they rely on. The other thing they've noticed is less sea ice, which could have a serious impact, not just on Sachs Harbor, but Canada and the world. So Sachs Harbor is located along the Northwest Passage, which could be the shortest shipping route connecting Europe and Asia. The area's sovereignty is disputed by other countries, including allies like the US. And Canada's claim on it is really limited by the lack of development there.
So what does all this mean then for the future of Sachs Harbor?
Yeah, so Lucas Jr. says that if Canada does prioritize developing and staking Canada's claim on this sea lane, Sachs Harbor could be key and could benefit from this.
Sachs has to be need more exposure to the whole Western Arctic. Like when you think about sovereignty, where the furthest community in the ISR, we're 72 degrees north, and sovereignty is really important. So we're trying to convince the federal government to get more infrastructure in the community for Coast Guard and some other stuff in the community.
And although there are a lot of changes happening, Megan, there's still a lot of tradition. The children are learning the language, Inuvialuktun. People still rely on hunting and fishing. And although the white fox fur trade has declined, there's still those who practice it. So meet Norman and Akina.
My father was a trapper, and he always trapped with his brothers. And growing up, you see that lifestyle. And as one of the 4 brothers, I really fell in love with his, way of life. And at grade 6, I didn't go back to school. I just went trapping with my father, and from then on, I just trapped and lived off the land most of the years.
So as you can see, there are pelts along his wall. It's not a full-time job, just a hobby, but Anakina says he will continue to do it for as long as he can walk. And although it's maybe not as prominent, it's a trade that is still admired and it's practiced, Megan.
Okay, thanks for all your reporting on this, Luke.
Thanks for having me here.
One woman from Sax Harbor is sharing her story in hopes that it inspires others. Frances Esau went from bartending in Inuvik NWT to working several jobs across Canada. And now she's encouraging Northerners to take opportunities no matter how big or small. During a visit to BC in 2019, Esau took a job cooking and cleaning on a fishing boat. Very soon, she was a part of the crew, catching halibut and crab. But the path to her job there wasn't straightforward. Esau says her time working in nightlife brought its own challenges.
I was having a hard time back in Inuvik. I was bartending, so I did a lot of partying. And I knew my friend was in BC, going to AA and everything. So I messaged them and I was like, I'm having a hard time over here. I want to smarten up and stop the party life.
Esau says she's discovered a new love of traveling and wants residents of her hometown to get out and see the country.
Now, I moved to Edmonton and then now I'm out here in Nunavut. It's just random. You never know, what, even if it's just a small opportunity, it could grow into a lot more.
Esau currently works at a camp in Nunavut. A Canada-wide project to identify Indigenous people in archival images is making headway. Photos from Nova Scotia were recently shared on social media, and members of the Waggama First Nation were able to spot some familiar faces. The CBC's Cassidy Chisholm has the details.
Well, it brings back memories, though, those chairs and...
Brian Gugu had never seen this photo of his young self until November. The photo was taken when he was 5 or 6 years old as a student at an Indian day school in Waggama First Nation. He doesn't remember the photo being taken, but he does know that his name wasn't attached to it until recently.
Being brought out now, it's a good feeling, I guess. Getting to see before I pass anyway.
Gugu only learned of the photo when it was posted on Facebook by a Library and Archives Canada initiative called Project Naming. The photo is one of thousands of archival images of Indigenous people housed within the National Archives that don't have any names associated with them. But the government agency is trying to change that through community outreach and social media.
If there was a white person in the picture, then that person's name was in the photo, but never the Indigenous person. And we have millions of photos at LAC. Not all of them are digitized, but it really helps to bring dignity and honor back to the photos.
Rosie Sillaboy has been following the project on Facebook and working to name individuals from Waggama. She also grew up in the community and recognized several people in the photos, including Gugu.
To me, identity is very important. I always say it's almost like Canada tried to erase us. So anything like this, it's important to me.
It's a sentiment shared by Janie Michael. Her sister Bernadette died in 2019. A photo of her as a young girl in a classroom was posted by Project Naming in November.
This part is like healing for me just to be able to talk about it.
Bond says Project Naming has thousands of photos from Mi'kma'ki, still without names. Sillaboy and Gugu both say they'd like to see more photos from their community so they can continue to help identify the people in them. Cassidy Chisholm, CBC News, Waggama First Nation.
A Nunatsiavut tradition to mark Old Christmas Day is still going strong. Yesterday, Naluit came off the sea ice to meet the children of northern Labrador. The CBC's Heidi Adder has more.
When the sun goes down on January 6th, the Naluit come out to play. The Nunatsiavut tradition goes back to when the Moravian Church first came to Labrador. Then, for hundreds of years, the sealskin-covered figures come visit the community. It's similar to Santa Claus. If a child has been good and sings to the Naluit, they'll be given candy. If a child has been bad or sassy, they may get chased down and whacked with a stick. It's beloved by Nunatsiavimuit of all ages.
And my husband used to say it was the only time of the year that you could run, laugh, scream, cry, and sing at the same time.
The tradition is practiced in almost all Nunatsiavut communities, and Inuit living in Happy Valley Goose Bay and St. John's brought it to their towns as well. At the end of the night, the Naluit walked or drove away, heading back out to their homes, resting until next year. Heidi Adder, CBC News, Happy Valley, Goose Bay.
And that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, go to cbc.ca/north. Thank you for watching. I'm Megan Roberts. Have a good night.
How can any of this be fair?
Now you might think, hey, we just need more doctors, but that's not really it.
Russian scheme here.
Shows you where it starts, where it ends.
Were you really willing to risk that job? Yes.
At Thunder Bay's favorite festival, Wake the Giant.
Ta-da! There it is.
Stream anytime. CBC News.
This is CBC North on your smart TV, because CBC News is now streaming local. Local news and weather on your connected TV or favorite device. CBC News North, streaming now.
When we work to end inequity, we help start something better. Support even the odds.
I've been waiting 8 years for this moment. It feels like magical. I'm still like pinching myself.
Bakers, now you are finally here.
Ruby! You're gonna regret this.
You tried to kill my son.
You're the one who tried to kill him. It's all my fault.
Coronation Street. Watch free on CBC Gem.
I want to have a brew.
Join me for Commotion, available now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.